This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, very good. Hi, very good morning and good evening, everyone. Welcome back. So last session we were discussing about how do we do the Terraform part, right? So we're just trying to do some kind of introduction to there. And so what all the things we talked about is we talked about outputs. Okay, so how do you put an output basically? All the time you don't need it, but yeah. So if you want to put something on the screen after the Terraform apply, so you can use this particular one. Okay, and the next one is variables. How do you declare the variables? All right, so we talked about the variable types, and as well as we talked about the data types also in the variables. Okay, so these are the things which we talked about. And the next one is we talked about the inputs. So how do you take the inputs in how do you take the inputs in so how do you take the inputs so how do you take the inputs from different ways we talked about. Okay, so there is I think I just made some slide also sometime back. Let me see. Yeah, outputs we talked about, and then variables we talked about. How do you declare the variable and how do you access the variable? So this is how you declare the variable, and this is how you access your variable, isn't it? And after that, so we talked about the variable and its data types. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. So the Terraform supports 3 data types. One is strings, numbers, and booleans, right? So strings should be quoted in a double quote, and whereas the numbers and booleans need not to be in quotes. And also Terraform supports only single quotes is what we talked about in the data types. And after that, so we talked about variable types also. So there are different types of variables. The default variable type, which is having only a single value, and whereas you will be having a list. These words are quite common. A list, map, so you go with the different scripting languages or programming languages, or even the tools also. Some codes, like some tools code like so Terraform, Ansible, and all. It's all so it's all okay, common words. Okay, so that's where so you have that's where you have okay, list, map, and all. Okay, quite common words. List is nothing but a key. A single key is going to have multiple values inside that. Also map is nothing but a different keys and values. Okay, also another important point is, so Terraform supports different data types in a single list or map variable. So those really need not to be the same data type basically. Okay, so that's what we discussed. And the next thing is so variable inputs. So how do you give that? Is default is equal to, in the variable section itself, you can give default equal to some input. And after that, we talked about how do you put some so .tf file, right? Terraform.tf file, or some extra sample.tf file. So we actually kept some extra sample auto.tf or something like that. Okay, so this one. And then so from CLI also, so tf_var is a prefix you're adding to a shell variables, and it can read the shell variables also. Sorry, the Terraform CLI. Terraform CLI is nothing but -var and the variable we passed it. Okay, and finally the shell variables. So these are the different types of inputs you provide. And after that, we talked about the TFVARs. There is a different TFVARs you have. So first of all, automatically it will pick it up terraform.tfvars file. Okay, and automatically it picks up terraform.auto.tfvars file. Any file with so any file with .auto.tfvars file, it will pick up those files also. And so manually if you have your own files like dev.tfs or prod.tfs, you can manually pass them by using -var -file is equal to dev.tfs file. Okay, so that's the idea about tfs. And the next one is the variable precedence also we talked about, which is nothing but the priority, isn't it? So the -var -file is actually a -var, and -var -file is the highest priority. And after that, you're getting, and after that, it is going to look for auto.tfs file. And if that is not there, terraform.tfs file. And finally, the least one is the shell environment variables. Okay, if the variable is already declared, it looks in all these places. If any of these particular places it is not found, then it finally interrupt and ask the user also, user input. Okay, so finally it will ask the user input. That's the idea. Okay, so that's the Terraform variable precedence. Okay, so let's go back. And so what is the next one? The variable. And so the next one is nothing but the resources basically. Okay, resources will be a part of any provider. Okay, so first of all, you should know the provider. So what are the providers that Terraform supports? Okay, if I go to the terraform.io, and if you go to the docs and you go to the providers, so these are the so actually they're telling that so they move the provider documentation to Terraform registry is the main page. So let me open that. So registry.terraform.io, and here you'll find out a lot of providers. Okay, so these are all the different providers that so Terraform is actually supporting, and there are 13 such pages basically. All right, so there are a lot of providers. Okay, so whichever the one you want to use, you can use that. Okay, so as we already talked about, there are some 200 plus providers which are available for Terraform. But okay, so for dealing with this, Terraform can deal with those. And yeah, so for us, actually, we're actually dealing with the cloud of Amazon. So we'll go with the Amazon one. And doesn't really matter. So Terraform always remains same. So the variable declaration for Amazon will still same. The variable declaration in Terraform for Azure also remains same. Okay, there is no change. So the only thing you need to understand is how do you build, how do you read the documentation and make the code. That's it. Nothing more than that. Okay. So, all right. Now I can just go for. Now we can just go for AWS, and AWS on the top you have documentation. So then this provider will have a lot of resources in the down. Okay, these are all the different services and those services related to and those these are the different services, and those services are now having some providers having some resources to do that. Okay, now let's say if I want to create something called as a server, so you have to go to the EC2 service. You know that EC2 is the service, and inside that you want to create an instance, you will find out AWS underscore some instance or something. Okay, so you see this instance, so you have to find out this information there. Okay, so that's the important thing in provider. Basically providers, there's nothing much to talk about the providers. But yeah, so there are some complex situations usually comes into providers. A sample provider is what you see here. Okay, so you write some Terraform and required providers and something like that. This. You can deal with multiple providers also at the same time. You can deal with the multiple providers also at the same time. So that means, so whenever you do the Terraform init, actually, it is going to download certain version of plugin so it downloads the plugin when you do the Terraform init. So yesterday, what I mentioned, it find out the resources, what all the resources are there, and it will know, it will come to know that what all the different resources which are out there, and so it will what all the different resources are out there, and automatically it will download that particular provider basically. Okay, so if you have given some AWS underscore instance, it automatically identifies, okay, so it has to use AWS, and it will download that particular provider. Okay, so I can show you from Azure. So you go to 52 I can show you from here. So like, let's say infra setup, and so probably if I go and show you this, okay, show you, and so here it is, Terraform apply. So you see this initializing the provider plugins, and it found out these particular plugins, and so it is actually installing HashiCorp version 3.22. HashiCorp version AWS 3.22 is what it is trying to download. Okay, so now whenever you do the Terraform, it actually downloads this. So now so sometimes people is not prefer to go with the latest versions also. So you started the project with one version, so they'll always use the same version of the plugin. Okay, they don't go with the they'll not go with the latest version. So because there is a chance of breaking your code. Okay, so Terraform is imposing the latest changes, and certain time, okay, they'll tell you that your code is outdated. Your code is outdated if you're actually using a latest version of the plugins. Okay, so people, and it might lead to some errors also. People don't want that, and actually they stick with one version, and if they upgrade it, if they want to upgrade it, they'll update the version number, and before updating, actually they'll always test in the lower environment. So that's where you have Dev here. The Dev is having 2.0, but the prod is having 1.0. So AWS plugin version, so 2.0 and 1.0. So why? Because the changes always comes to the Dev version first, and if then the Dev side, if it is all fine, then it goes to the production, isn't it? So that's the standard practice. And so that is where, so this Terraform providers also, if you want to use in particular about some versioning and all, also it supports. And even for multiple environments also, you can keep it in multiple versions also. So this supports, but we might not be entering into this area. Okay, so we may not be writing it, but keep in mind it is possible. Keep in mind it is possible, and it can be achievable. All right. So, but at least so technically talking about, so the problems which the persons is, I mean, the people gonna face is also gonna be solvable actually. So some practices, but I mean, some better practices if we make it. But yeah, so it's a chicken egg problem. It's never get into a concluded conversation. So it's all depends upon the scenarios and situations and people even. Okay, so different people think in different way. So yeah, me put this way. So it is possible. Okay, so if you want to make it, or if you want to ignore also, it's still okay. So we are actually ignoring that particular part and moving on. That's nothing more than that. Okay, and and Terraform from Terraform 0.112 version actually, so the provider declaration is not mandatory. Okay, you don't want to really declare any kind of a provider. So this Terraform is actually smart enough to understand what resources you are using, and it downloads that particular appropriate plugin, okay, to do the work. And so the next one is and based on the resources, it can be the provider. That's fine. You can specify a particular version of the provider, or the latest can be used if not provided by default. Okay, so as I shown here, so it is actually telling anything greater than 1.0 you should be using, and equivalent to or around 1.0, that means 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, like that. It will not go to 2 dot actually. So that symbol tells that that's a Terraform equivalent for that. Okay, so here also 2.1 or 2 dot something like that, are equivalent to or greater than 2.0. So majorly you're specifying that way. All right, so yeah, or if you want to be very particular about the versioning, I think you can just go with this. I think equal to works, I believe. Okay, so you just want to be very particular about, I want to use exactly 1.0, then else can probably specify is equal to I think even that equality is also not needed if I'm not wrong. Need to refer, but still, yeah. So just understand this way. So if it is go, I want to use a very particularly 1.0 version, 2.0 version, something like that. Okay, this is how. And sometimes you deal with multiple providers of same provider type. Okay, that means I need to deal with 2 Amazon accounts at the same time. So how do you deal with that? I want to deal with the 2 Amazon accounts at the same time. So here we are going to deal with 1 account. But if I want to deal with multiple accounts also, it is possible. And so, but all you need to do is you have to explore something called as alias. Okay. So with the help of aliases, you can take care. So you'll be having 2 accounts. So usually this happens basically. Usually this happens in real-time scenarios. In Amazon, usually will not have a single account in companies. So in Amazon, you're going to have called as AWS landing zones. Okay, when it goes to the landing zones, Okay, so when it goes to the landing zones, how you are going to have is you're going to have different accounts for a different purpose in Amazon. Okay, so different purpose for different purpose for different requirements. Okay, so that's where Amazon is also going to call it as a landing zone. Okay, if you read the documentation. So what is the Amazon landing zone? Is a solution that helps customers more quickly set up a secure multi-account AWS environment based on the AWS best practices. Okay, so rather than building from the green field, okay, so what we what we are going to do is, so Amazon is actually going to give you some structure, so better use this, and we can just, okay, we'll be using this. So now here you'll be usually finding out multiple accounts. Okay, so there is a shared services account, there's a log archive account, okay, there's a security account, like this is a spoke account actually where your resources is going to be, like that. Different accounts will be there. So now when you're dealing with the different accounts, now you want to make some change, one change here, one change here. So now you need to deal with those particular multi accounts as well. And so usually, yeah, so deal with multi accounts as well, and that's how you can do that. So that by using alias. So just keep in mind, so sometimes you get it dealing with multiple accounts. If you want to deal with that, alias. Probably I'm not getting into that particular scenario because we are using single account kind of thing. Okay, so but it is possible. All right, any questions on this before proceeding? So just on the glimpse, to declare any kind of a provider unless until it is really needed. Okay, so Terraform can take care of that from the resources itself. And so usually if you have some kind of a multiple providers, you need to know that how do you start dealing with that. So sometimes you need to use a version-based multiple providers, or sometimes you want to use account-based multiple providers. So version-based is how do you deal with here, what I've shown you. And so basically, if it is a multiple account base, so then you have to use aliases. Okay, so yeah, any questions on this so far? Okay, all right. So the next one is going to be the resources. Okay, the actual resources we are going to run. Okay, resources actually have arguments. Resources have the arguments as keys. Okay, technically they call it as so arguments. Very important one. Every resource will have argument. That's what you'll find out in the documentation. You go with the AWS instance, so something equal to something, right? Something equal to something. And the left side something is called as arguments, and the arguments will be provided by here, and the arguments will be provided here. All right, and 1 second. Sorry. Yeah, I was saying, yeah, so arguments is quite important thing. So on the left side, whatever you find out is called as arguments, and all the arguments 1 second, 1 second. sorry. So the resources have the resources has okay, arguments on the left side, and on the right side whatever you provide is the value. Okay, and all the arguments you'll find out every provider will provide the documentation for those particular, I mean, every resource will have arguments, and everything you'll find out from the documentation only. You know, to remember everything. So everything you have to go to this documentation, you have to identify what all the options you can use, understand, and then use it. Okay, so that is how you have to make the development. Don't keep like, you know, I have to remember everything. And again, so this editor will help you, you know, this IntelliJ will help you, you know, to refer the documentation also. At least if you know some keywords, automatically it starts filling you, it's automatically starts filling the things. Okay, like let's say if I say something like, you know, so resource AWS, I don't know all the things, like let's say AWS underscore instance automatically came up, so there is an AMI came out, and the next one came out, like let's say I want to use something called a security group. If I start putting SCC, so then automatically you got getting this, so the security group IDs I can use like something like this. Okay, so then probably if I want to put some subnet, you know, so if you know some keywords, that's fine. If you don't remember that, also go here and read about that, understand that, and use it. Okay, so all right, so that's how I want to deal with this. All right, and okay, so that's how it is going to be. And the next thing coming back here, resource block will have two inputs. One input is nothing but the referring of, sorry, one input is nothing but or one argument is nothing but two inputs. Rather than that, I will say two arguments. Arguments are, again, word is a keyword. Yeah, it's a problem. So yeah, argument resource block will have two kind of technically I'm not sure what it's called as, but yeah, so two, you know, so it's given with the input of two inputs. Basically, one input is nothing but referring which resource you want to use it. Okay, and the second one is nothing but locally what you are naming to that particular resource. In local reference you want to do that. Okay, in locally you need to refer, okay, your own names basically. Okay, like let's say AWS instance, I might create another AWS instance, I might create another AWS instance. So you need to have some notation determining, okay, this is that. So that's where they started with, you know, so putting your own name followed to that particular resource. You will be having the actual name provided by the provider and your local name. Okay, so the actual resource name provided by the provider is AWS underscore instance, and the name I'm putting to that is sample. Okay, that's it. And AMI equal to this one, and instance type is equal to this one. All right, and the next thing is okay, and the next thing is okay, you can refer that particular resource. Okay, you can extract some information from that resource. Like let's say I created a server, I want its IP address. Okay, I created a database, I want its endpoint. Okay, so like that, probably, you know, so you need to know that some information about from that particular resource. Okay, and that information, every resource, whatever after it's creating, after creating every resource, I mean, after creating a resource, every resource try to expose some information about what it has done. Okay, and that particular one is nothing but called as attributes. Okay, so did I mention here? No. Okay, so what I try to mention here is a resource block will have two inputs. One is the provider resource name, and the other one is your local resource name. AWS instance is the provider resource name, and sample is this one. This okay. And resource will be referred as, you know, provider underscore resource name. Okay, provider resource name dot local resource name. So that means you can just see this public IP AWS underscore instance dot sample. Okay, resource expose the information after creating it. Those called as attributes. Okay, so public underscore IP is an attribute to the resource of AWS instance. So, and again, those attributes also you'll find out in the documentation only. If you go down, so first you will find out arguments, and which is nothing but the inputs you're providing. And after creating all the inputs, okay, it exposes some information in the form of attributes. So what all the attributes it is exposing, you can see those attributes also here. Okay, so every resource will have arguments and attributes, and you'll be referring it. So arguments used to build the resource, and after creating the resource, like let's say you want to use that information of that resource to another resource or somewhere, so in the somewhere in the output, somewhere in another resource, okay, anywhere you'll be giving the resource information as by referring the attribute. Okay, so we'll be using attributes, argument and attributes. And whenever you are referring another resource, you'll be using attributes. When you are building the resource, it is arguments. Okay, so these are the two important things you have to keep in mind. Clear? Any questions? Okay, so the next one is Terraform code indentation. Okay, so what is this Terraform code indentation, or what is the meaning of indentation? So meaning of indentation is quite simple, right? So it's an English word. You just understand that, so it's from the grammar kind of thing. So you properly follow, like let's say after you complete your sentence, end up with full stop is some indentation. So or you start a paragraph with some spaces in between, some spaces in the starting. Okay, that's indentation, right? So basically, indentation is a quite common indentation is a quite common word in English, basically. So you see this diagram, you understand. So here, so paragraph break symbol. So this is one indentation symbol. All right. So and so probably some full stops. So spaces appear as dots or some. I mean, so some indentation is nothing but you follow some kind of a standards. Okay, so that's the idea. So some spacing, you see this, most probably you know the Word document. So this is the indentation, left indent, top indent. Generally, I'm not sure you've been through the settings of your Word. So the spacing is some kind of indentation, right? So now the same thing, okay, so the same thing, the Terraform also takes this indentation part. Okay, so I mean, it's a suggestion, it's not mandatory, it's a suggestion. So Terraform indentation, it'll take to the documentation directly from there, and styling conventions of Terraform. So what actually they're telling is so these are the conventions you just need to follow. Indent 2 spaces for each nesting level. Okay, so that means you try to write the code. So actually I already given it, so you can also write this code in this way. So you can also go with directly like this. I already followed the indentation. Okay, so you can just directly use this, but rather than this, what they're telling is, so this is the resource block, right? So inside any block, use some 2 spaces in any nested block. Okay, so this is one. And sometimes you will be having something called as like let's say inside a block also you'll find out some block, like let's say I can give some tags. Okay, so like let's say if I go and give some tags and is equal to the braces, and here again name is equal to some sample. You just give that way. Okay, name is equal to sample. All right, so this is what you're giving. Okay, so this is first thing. Okay, you fix that. What is the second thing? So when multiple arguments with single line values appear on consecutive lines at the same nesting level, okay, align their equal signs. Okay, that's what they're telling. So that means the code actually generally what they're telling is you align your equals. Okay, so this is the idea. All right, so these are the two things that actually Terraform is telling from the documentation. Follow this. Okay, this helps you in understanding the code in a better way. Okay, while reading the code, actually it easily you can read it. Okay, that's the only idea. Apart from that, technically it's no value. And so yeah, this is the indentation things. this they are trying to tell you. Okay, you can just follow that one. So we also generally try to follow that as well. Okay, and there is no, again, as I mentioned, so there is really no need to do this, and it's only for our understanding purpose. Okay, cool. And I'll say that, so what all the indentation is, so two spaces in any new block or even nested block. Okay, and align all your equal signs. Okay, so yeah, all right, cool. Now the requirement we're going to do now here is, okay, so we're going to start with, creating a resources. Okay, so yeah, sorry, and yeah, sorry, something is coming. All right, so let's try to create a code. Let's try to create one resource, and that particular resource is, let's try to create some resource, and that particular resource, what we're going to do is what I'm saying is, let's try to create a resource, and that particular resource should be having two resources, which is having some kind of a dependency. Okay, so what we can use is, so simply to start with, we can start with, yeah, let's go with the practical one, or let me put something here. So I will create an instance with one security group also. So create an instance with one security group. Okay, so that's the idea. And yeah, so how do you do that? So let's try to do this. And like, let's say sample.tf. So you can go for resource. Okay, so AWS underscore instance, and I'll say that sample instance, something like that, my name, and it's mandatorily expecting two values. So one is AMI, and the other one is another one is instance. Okay, instance type. So instance type is t3.small, something like that, or even micro is also fine. So anything. And AMI ID, you pick up one AMI ID, so you have my AMI ID also, you can pick up that. So here I'll go to the private images, not private, public images. So you go with a public images, and you search for DevOps practice. Okay, so and then yeah, you did it. Now I want to create another resource, so a security group also I want to create. So you need to find it out where you can get the security group. So you can just search for security, security underscore group is a common word, you get it. So here you're getting in Elastic Cache, Glue, ODS, Redshift. Okay, so I'm actually making it for EC2 instances, right? So you'll find out for EC2 instances also. Glue, ODS, security. I'll search for just for security, and ODS. You're getting these. Yeah, here you have in VPC. It's actually falling under VPC because it's a firewall kind of thing. It falls under security group. And now this is the security group. There is an example. I'll just copy this and paste it here, and I'll modify as per my requirement. So allow SSH, I'll say. So this is allow SSH. Okay, and so we want to do this and allow SSH inbound access. And what is SSH port? 22, and this is you're creating it for SSH. And this is the one. And the CIDR block, I want to allow it to some 0.0.0. So 0.0.0.0 by 0, right? So, and egress, it's completely open, and this is basically allow underscore SSH. Okay, so this much, that's it. Now let's go to the instances where we can run this code. Let me start my workstation. Yeah. CD Terraform, git pull Terraform init. Terraform apply to approve. So now it is asking for the provider information. Hey, you didn't give any provider information. Yes, now provider is mandatory. Why? Because what is the information you are missing here is you are not giving any kind of, I press Control C. I didn't give any kind of information about which region I had to run and things like that. So minimum, okay, so it has to go with provider.ef. Any file name is okay. I'm giving for some meaningful name. So I'll just go for provider AWS, and inside that I'll say that region is US-East-1, okay, which is nothing but North Virginia. North Virginia is technically in the, so it's called as US East 1. So that's the code language basically. So yeah, that's where I'm giving it. Now I'll say that git space pull Terraform apply auto approve. Okay, so first it created a security group because there is a dependency, clear dependency, right? There is no dependency, sorry, you didn't create any, but yeah, somehow it actually created the, or two things started in parallel also, it seems, but not sure, but not completely. Security group has been created first, but actually you're not referring this particular security group here, so you have to go with the VPC underscore security group IDs. You have to create a security, you have to give the security group ID information, because the instance whatever is being launched here is coming with some, okay, default security group. Okay, if you look into the security group, it's actually picking up the default security group. But now what I'm going to say is, hey, you use a security group dot allow SSH dot, what is it attribute you have to use? It's an ID you're giving, right? So ID, so attribute you are using is ID. So because it is expecting IDs here, okay, and you give this. Okay, now if you just go and try to refresh, it just would have modified now. It creates a new security group, and that security group would have been assigned to this. You see this allow SSH. Okay, so now what you have seen is how do you create a resource and how do you put a one resource information in another resource. Now if I just go for Terraform destroy, okay, so Terraform destroy hyphen auto hyphen approve. So Terraform destroy is done, and let's go and give Terraform apply once again now. So now there is a relation anyhow, said the security group only will get created first. And yeah, so now it is creating, that's fine. That's okay. And now I want to tell you one more thing here. So there is certain questions actually coming to me, right? So Terraform apply. Now Terraform apply one more time I'm doing. Okay, what's actually Terraform is doing? Is it creating another instance? No, right? So now you destroyed the old one, that's fine. You know, you created this one. Now I run the Terraform apply once again. Terraform apply once again. Okay, now you go and try to refresh. There is still only one instance. It's not really applying every time, right? So then what actually it is doing? So I have my questions here. Okay, so what are my questions here is you know, so how Terraform is actually what happens if you run okay, what happens, okay, so or let me put this way. Okay, so the question is so the question here is okay, so what happens if we what happens if you run Terraform multiple times? If you run Terraform apply multiple times, okay, what happens? Okay, so if you run multiple times, does it create you know, multiple resources you know, again and again? Is that the, I mean, that's a question, right? So now the answer, you already know that. Okay, so the answer is okay, no. Okay, the next question immediately I'll put it is how. Right, so how is it happening, isn't it? So that's a quite important thing. All right, so and so the answer basically is so the answer which falls over here is okay, so answer which falls over here is okay, Terraform state file. So means, okay, so question basically, what is it? Okay, so again I put a question, so the answer I would be saying is okay, so when Terraform applies, it stores the information, of the resources it has created. And so here when Terraform applies then it stores the information about the resource it has created in a form of a file, and it is called as state file. Okay, so Terraform state file. Okay, now let's go back here and take a look, you know, so do ls, so there is a state file created, so state file, and its backup also has been created because this is an important file for you now, right? If you lose this file, Terraform will create one more resource. Yeah, if you remove that file and you do the Terraform apply, it will create one more resource. And that is not we expect actually in the project, right? So generally we ask to create some servers, and those servers will be created, and anytime and how many times I apply the code, it always has to remain the same number of servers only. It should not double the servers or triple the servers. Okay, that doesn't make sense. Okay, so now we are going to talk about the state file basically. All right, so cool. Now the next one is Terraform state file. Okay, so let me just first destroy this. There's no needed. So Terraform by default create one TF state file storing the information on the resources created, as I mentioned. Yeah, and this file is very important, meaning if you lose the file, we lost the track of all the resources created. That's a very important thing. And the strategy of saving the Terraform state file is also a quite important thing. Now you should not lose that file. You should not lose that particular file. Okay, so never lose that particular file. So you have to be very careful. So that's the reason. So what people do is, so that information can be stored in some database. Okay, so the strategy of saving Terraform extend is offer and store this state information in a database. Okay, so but again, storing in database will need to have the database running, isn't it? Right? So yeah, again, additionally, you need to run some database. Yeah, so but technically you don't really require that also, because it's a file. You really don't need to put it in the database format. You can also put it in a file where it can be never removed, or even if it is removed, can be recovered kind of thing. If you can keep it in such place, it is fine. Okay, so that's where the cloud providers extends their supports to the Terraform, or even Terraform extended supports using the cloud related solutions. And in Amazon we have S3 bucket. Okay, so in Amazon we have something called as S3 bucket. So there where we're actually going to keep our state file. Okay, so that's the idea. So yeah, so but how to do that, we'll see this now. But before to that, any questions? Understood the point?
Say destroy the instant, that instant will be destroyed, terminated.
Not only the instance, it is a termination, like any resource will be deleted. Yeah, whatever Terraform created, it does destroys them, deletes everything. Yeah. Yes,
Yeah, Raghuji, you also have the state file backup file, right? So even the state file is destroyed, you can use the backup file.
Yeah, even in the worst case, if you lost the file or corrupt the file, this major file, okay, it had some backup file, it uses that from this particular backup file, you can at least restore it. Yeah, that's the idea. So it by just for safe side, it is creating 2 files. That's it. Yeah. Any questions? Okay, so before do that, so first of all, you need to know that what is in that S3 bucket. S3 bucket is nothing but your Google Drive. Okay, so in Google Drive, what you do basically, it's also a database service. It's also a database service, but you actually directly upload the files, right? So it's actually storing the data is called as database, and your database is data is objects. Your data is objects, right? So that means you're not actually storing some kind of some kind of a database format. Is actually kind of a object format, right? It's objects. And yeah, so that's where we're going to have the alternative the same way in Amazon itself. It's Amazon S3. S3 is nothing but simple storage service. Okay, S3. So 3S inside that. So it's S3. And over here, so you're going to create a bucket, and in this particular bucket, you can upload the files, download the files, and things like that. That's it, as simple as that. And you can refer them. And the very beautiful things in S3 is it offers the objects over HTTP layer. Okay, so today you are actually trying to access the web page, right? So to attend the session, so every one of you is using a URL, isn't it? So it's actually D53. It's actually S3. Okay, I uploaded an index.html file. Okay, I uploaded an index.html file, and that HTML file you're accessing over a HTTP. So that's what actually it is going to do. All right. So that means I already have some S3 bucket. Let me show you that. So I will just go to here, my main account, and over here, so there are different things. I'll just go to this one. And what I usually do is, if I want to make some new content or something like that, so what I'll do is I'll just I kind of delete this. So delete this, and what I'll do is I'll just upload the file. So how do I upload the files? It's quite simple. So here you have, you can just drag and drop. Okay, choose to upload. So I will just go to here and I will say, but it's an coincidence, but I need to upload some changes also. So let me just bring those files. Okay, generated files. Where is this? There is this in my system. 53. Yeah. Just go to upload. Yeah, so that's all. And you can just say that, I'll say upload, and these files will be uploaded there and will be accessible for you to access over the HTTP. And additionally, these buckets are private basically. So this S3 bucket, bucket, the word bucket is a very common word in the development world. Okay, so it's not really related to anything related to Amazon. Okay, so I will say that, if someone have so a lot of work, actually we can also even consider them as, hey, if you have a lot of things in your bucket, just share with me, kind of thing, right? So it's a quite common word. Okay, you don't impose that particular word to kind of S3 basically. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll make these particular items to public, because every one of you is actually accessing over the public. Okay, I just made this public, but necessarily you no need to do every time, but you just understand the whole concept. Now if I go and try to refresh, okay, the new content will come into picture. So the new content is having some new dates actually. So try to refresh. I'm not sure whether I made the changes. I made the changes. This is 53. Yes. So it is being cached actually. It's somehow being cached in my local system. So I'll go to incognito mode and open. Interesting. Did I open the correct one?
D52 you're showing.
Oh, 52 I'm showing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I uploaded in 53. Thank you. So here, okay, I'll put it as 53. Enter. Perfect. Yeah. So some changes in the dates. So please just take a note. I just cannot actually avoid of taking. I mean, like I tried a max, but I cannot able to. Yeah. So that's where I extended 2 more days for Christmas as well. Please, please take a look on that dates. Plan accordingly. Yeah. So coming back to the point again, once again. So here you just upload your bucket. So you can upload some files. You can upload images. You can upload videos. Anything you upload, and you get the things here. Okay. So yeah. So that's how it is going to be. All right. Now yeah, even like let's say some applications also uses this. So there is something called as Urban Pro. Okay. So Urban Pro is where I hosted my profile basically. So now if I just like let's say this is an application which is hosted inside Amazon, and that's where if I go to my so if I go to my profile and if I say that I want to, where is this dashboard? Not dashboard. Courses, I think. Yeah, courses. I take syllabus. I don't know where to upload some files also. So just to give you some context, okay, so how does it look like in real-time world also. That's really I don't know where to upload. Okay, like let's say DevOps. Yeah, course content probably. And new, I think, yeah, if I just put a document, assume I just put a document and unit name is something like, so DevOps any. Okay, so I will say that DevOps, like let's say topics. Okay, so yeah, and upload a new document and just choose it is just offering these kind of files. And probably, so what I can do is I can just bring one small PDF which I have some list of topics. What is that? Just to give you some sites.google.com. Yeah, I'll go to browse, downloads, my syllabus. Okay, assume, just click on save. And now, okay, this is an application hosted in Amazon, and where this particular actually the file will go on stories inside my S3 buckets, not my, basically in their Urban Pros account of S3 buckets, it will upload. Okay, you will see that also. Let it come with that. I think actually I'm doing the time waste, but I think I can directly hit this also. So let me show you this. There's already some PDFs also which are uploaded. And if you just come to here, yeah, so some old things which were there. If you just click on this, sorry, not this. So let me not even this. So here is a PDF, right? So it will show you. You see this? You open the PDF, automatically it is showing that, so S3, which is actually AP Southeast 1. Okay. So AP Southeast 1 is which region? If I go to AP Southeast means they are hosted in Singapore region. So this is an old application, like I think 6-7 years back, not even 6 years, 4-5 years back. Basically, this website was this application was launched, as far as I remember, but might be before to that. That time Amazon doesn't have a region in Mumbai. Okay, so that's where the main business for them is India. Okay, the Urban Pro is actually runs from India only. It's their main business, this one. And but Amazon doesn't have these regions available. That's where they went to the nearby region, which is Singapore. Isn't it? I told you already this strategy. Basically, you have to be very near to get it application, right? So, or I uploaded this file sometime back, so that time they might be using Singapore region. Now if I upload it, they might be using, so maybe Mumbai, whatever it is. So some PDF. So but what you need to understand here is they uploading into S3 buckets, right? So the same way. So I'm also following the same strategy, some kind of thing. So I'm actually putting the files in S3, and that's how you're actually getting it here. So now you need to understand one thing over here. So what is the point you need to understand here is you can upload the files and you can access them over the HTTP layer. Okay, it offers the objects over HTTP. So that's the context. Okay, so you create a bucket and you store objects inside that. Object need not to be the word, technical word, basically bucket objects. If you see the bucket objects, say simply like this, and you go to the images. So the context of this particular bucket is need not to be all the objects of the same type. It can be a different types. It can be a different types of data, a video, a image, a PDF, a text file, document, anything. Okay, it can be a code also, no issues. Okay, that's the basic idea. Clear? Any questions on this so far? Okay, so now I can go ahead and create some buckets and I can start using it. So I'm not going to do a deep dive of S3 buckets again, as I mentioned. So we'll just use it, whatever is needed. And so now, so I create a bucket and I can upload the manual files, like let's say T53, so Terraform state files. This is the bucket name I'm creating. And in which region? North Virginia region, yes. And so now it actually has to be going to create a bucket. And while creating the bucket, you have to keep in mind that the name has to be unique. Okay, I create my bucket, you don't understand that's my folder or something like that. No, it's actually offering over the internet, right? So the bucket data is actually offering over the internet. So that's where the name has to be unique, not only to your account, globally to Amazon, the name has to be unique. Otherwise, it will not create. So like, let's say if I go and say that create bucket and then I'll say sample would have been created by someone already. Definitely create a bucket, sample bucket name already exists. So you don't think about your account. It's actually, when it comes to S3, it's actually global across all the accounts of Amazon. Okay, so that's where I just try to put it some unique name and I got the bucket created. Okay, fine. And now I can go here and I can upload the files, so upload a file, choose a file, add a file. I just choose what other file I want to choose. Okay, so it's upload. And also you can upload the versioning also. There is a support for versioning. So that means you upload the file name today and upload the same file name tomorrow. So there is a versioning also it can maintain. Okay, so that's the idea. And also basically you have a lot of options, like how fast you're looking for data and things like that. So yeah, you have some different things when you create a bucket. Actually, I didn't show you that. So if I go with the create bucket, so actually it will show you some advanced settings, not even advanced. Okay, let me show you this way. You go inside this and you go into the permissions properties. Yeah, properties. So here let me show you. This new UI is confusing. Where is it? Login, cloud transfer, acceleration. Let me put this way. So types of S3, S3 storage. So like this, S3 storage class. Okay, but this new UI, where is it having? While creating the bucket only, it should ask us usually class. Let's see. Class. Or let me do this way. Go to the upload, add file, and while adding this file, it is giving some options here. Additional upload settings. Yeah, on the file level only it is giving. Yeah, makes sense. So now you can choose the different types of data types, storage types also. So how fast you want to look into the data, and based on that you will be having different pricing as well. I'm just going to go with the standard, that's the frequent access data. Okay, like let's say some data once in a year I might access it. Okay, once in a 3 years I might access it. Based on that, you can just go with the other storage types where your data. Okay, so charges will be less basically for storing the data. Okay, so if you are actually putting it under frequent access data, so that's the highest costliest one. And whereas if you go with the other one, so those are some cheaper and even some costly other things also which is available. Okay, cool. And so now that's fine, just to give you some glimpse on that, but really I'm not going to touch any of these particular options for our requirement. Now I created one bucket name, so now I have to tell to my Terraform that, hey Terraform, I want to store this particular state file in S3 bucket. Okay, so can you do that? Okay, I mean, you tell to the Terraform and Terraform will do that. Okay, so how do you tell to the Terraform? So remote state. So let me talk about that. New directory 905 remote state. Sample.tf. Provide.tf. Sample.tf, you just take the same code, which is fine. And provide.tf also, you take the same code, which is fine. Okay, so provider also is fine. And so now I'll go for state file. So the state file is I would like to say that Terraform and so backend, and backend is what backend you want to use, S3, and you have to give this. Okay, and you have to give some properties. So what is the properties you have to give is bucket. What is the bucket name? The bucket name you created one, so which is this particular bucket. Okay, and so what is the key? So key, where you want to store that? So key is actually going to be is just say that Terraform, or like let's say sample, right? Sample is a directory, so sample slash Terraform Terraform.tf state file. Okay, so the region, okay, where is the bucket region? Bucket region is also US East 1 only. Okay, so the resources you want to create in US East 1, at the same time your bucket wherever you're putting your state file is also on the same region. So you have to give these particular parameters, and now Terraform will start dealing with that. Git space pull do ls, so cd 05 Terraform init, and Terraform apply -auto -approve. Okay, so now did you see that ls? Is there any terraform.tf state file? No here, no. Then where is that file? Okay, so that file is actually has been uploaded to S3. So and then you come to here, so try to refresh. There's a sample directory created, and inside sample you have terraform.tf state file. So that is safely stored here. Okay, so that's the idea about okay, so that's the idea about having so the Terraform state file in the remote location. Clear? Any questions? Yeah. So the next thing, yes, Murali.
Will it not store the backup file? It is only storing the
Not needed. It's already a safe location. You don't really require locker inside a locker, right? Kind of way, yeah. So the next one is Terraform remote state file, so which is fine. So we simply choosing a remote state file will cause some problems now. You simply choose that, no use. Okay, so some scenarios will be there, so which actually so it's gonna, like let's say a simple scenario, two people are trying to refer a same state file. So S3 will not support S3 will not support locking mechanism. Okay, whereas the other two clouds will support the other two major clouds support the locking mechanism. You take Azure supports locking mechanism. So if that means if someone is actually trying to modify the file, the other person cannot modify the file. Okay, and but whereas S3 will not support you that. Okay, if someone is modifying the file, the other one also can modify the file. But end of the day, while saving it, it doesn't give a clarity that which content will save the file, but sometimes it leads to some corruption as well. Okay, so just to keep that in mind, okay, so we need to ensure that our state file is we're storing the state file, and it has to be safely stored as well. Okay, so that means so someone cannot actually try to or two people cannot actually try to modify the file at the same time. So we need to ensure that we make the locking mechanism. So that means if someone is doing the Terraform apply, other person should not do the Terraform apply at the same time on the same state file. So that's the whole idea. Okay, and how do we do that is so this particular this particular approach can be done by taking another service help, which is called as DynamoDB. DynamoDB is a service which is offered by Amazon. It's a database. So database means, how do you get the database? You have to take a server, so that's an infra service, and you install the software, that's a platform service, and you go and create a table, so that's where you actually store the data. So that's a SaaS service. Okay, there are three layers, right? So in cloud, basically you have infra, you have platform, and you have software as a service. Now what is this? DynamoDB is a software as a service in database. Okay, so this is one of the first of its kind, basically. Okay, this Amazon is the first guy actually who made that particular one as possibility. Okay, so that means database as a service directly, database as a service as a software service. Okay, so previously people provided so infra as a service. That means they provide the server, you install the software, you create your schema, and you get the table, and then you use the table. Okay, now you avoid the infra, so there are other services of Amazon also which provide a platform as a service. So that means they provide database as a service, they provide MySQL, they provide they'll provide Redis, they'll provide MongoDB, all these databases as a service. But again, you have to create your schema and things like that. It's typically like a platform. Okay, and whereas the software means, that means MongoDB is something like that. Go ahead and create a table, these are rows and columns I want, and that level of automation you don't have with other services. But Amazon has its own database, and they're calling it as DynamoDB. Okay, so DynamoDB, and so that particular DynamoDB help we are going to take, and we're going to create a table, and so the table will create one keyword, and we'll say that so hey Terraform, whenever you're actually doing a Terraform apply, use a lock mechanism. So, and whenever the Terraform is actually doing an apply, it will go and create a lock in the database. And if someone is actually trying to do the same thing, so then it will see that particular lock and say that so there is a lock exists and I cannot continue. Terraform will clearly tell that. Okay, so Terraform actually try to extended its support to support the locking mechanism of S3. They're actually taking the help of DynamoDB. Okay, and they create a lock there, and they start doing the transaction. Once the transaction is done, they'll release the lock and come back. That's what the Terraform is going to do. And how do you do that is, so here you go with DynamoDB service called as DynamoDB, and you have to say that so you create a DynamoDB, and you have to say that it's actually, what is it here, call it as DynamoDB table. So the table name is Terraform. Okay, I'll put the table name as Terraform. Now here, create a table, just create a table, that's it. So the table name is, you created already Terraform there, so the same way Terraform. And what is the partition key? So the primary key, actually they're expecting something that you can find it from the documentation. So Terraform S3 remote state file, backend type S3, and here they are actually allowing you to keep yeah, so here you have DynamoDB state locking. So you see this, you have to create a file option. I mean, you have to create a primary key with a lock ID. Okay, so the lock ID is a key name, and it's a string you're telling. Okay, just create it, that's it, lock ID. And Terraform users is, that's it, and no two persons can run this at the same time. Okay, so now I'll just say that so sorry, I log into the same machine, and I'll go for cd Terraform. I didn't push the code. And git pull now. So cd Jeera 5 remote state, you're already there. Now Terraform init, and then Terraform apply -auto -approve. Both the places I'm going to execute at the same time. So now the second one is going to throw us an error saying that so there's already a log file. You see this? The first one is actually running, initiated running. The first one went fine. The second one, whoever is trying to do that, so it actually got an error locking state basically. So you're putting the first DynamoDB, you acquire the lock there. If the lock is there, the Terraform will proceed. Otherwise, Terraform will not proceed. So this will help us in stabilizing our state file as well. Okay, this is also an important thing you have to keep in mind when you make a state file, especially in Amazon. And other two clouds you don't require, like Amazon, Azure and Google Cloud, the two major clouds you don't require. I don't know the other clouds basically. I never worked on. But these on these three clouds, okay, other two clouds you don't really require this mechanism. It comes out of box, okay. But only for Amazon, you have to take the help of DynamoDB for locking the things, okay. So that's the idea. Clear? Any questions?
Raghu, to change the state file, you need special permissions, right?
Special permissions of?
To change the state file, to access the state file, anybody can access the state file.
Whoever have access, right? So I'm an administrator access, so I can do everything. So yeah, whoever have access, they can do that.
Okay, so security is not secure in that.
I didn't get your point. Sorry, come again.
So it is not secured in that way. I mean,
you limit the access, right? So this is the lab. I opened my access. So we already created a user. Okay. So here, I mean, in the starting, sometime when I started using AWS CLI, I went to the IAM. Okay. I went ahead and created my own user, and I created an administration access. Okay. So administrator. So I created the name of Raghu. I put the administrator access. So don't give administrator access. Give a limited access. That's it. So don't give access to everyone. Yeah. Anyone? Any other questions? I think we can stop here.
Yeah. If you have a corruption in the Terraform, like state file in S3, or it's been deleted by default, like unexpectedly, do we have a backup from S3?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where actually the Amazon is telling that, so you enable versioning. So if you enable the versioning, when someone is deleting, so that consciously gives an error saying that, so you're deleting, you want to delete this file or its versions also. Okay. If you delete the file, still the older version still remain there. Okay. So yeah, someone is accidentally doing the things, that's different. But yeah, so I mean, either you do it accidentally or intentionally, deletion is a deletion, right? So loss is a loss. So you have to be careful there.
What's the best practice? Let's say we are working on different functionality in Terraform. What's the best practice in terms of we use one var file, one variable file, or if I want to call variables from the stuff that you are working on? I think you already talked about it, but maybe I missed it. How can I do that?
Yeah, so good point. Actually, I missed somehow yesterday mentioning about this particular point. So I mean, there is a company called as Gruntwork. There's a company called as gruntworks.io. So this company actually offers Terraform as a service. Okay, this does only one thing: Terraform as a service, just in a day. Okay, 24 hours you provide them. Okay, they'll provide you the production level, infrastructure code. Okay, they have some wrapper written, so they have their own module. I mean, some kind of code reference and everything. So based on that, so what they will tell is, say, hey, if you want some code, you ask me, I'll give it, and you pay for that. That's what this guy does basically. Okay, fine. Now, this guy actually, there's a co-founder for this particular organization. So that means definitely there's a big companies here. That means these guys actually written so much code, no doubt in that, right? So now the best practice of what they are doing actually, right? So that's where his name is Brickman. Okay, he also wrote a book called as Terraform Up and Running. So second edition is also available now. Okay, so yeah, so is this. If you want to know about the best practices, you start doing this. Okay, so you start read about this particular book. Okay, fine. And also, you want to really go with the book, complete book as well. So you can start. There are 2 videos of his majorly. You need to look into that. So Terraform, Terraform Brickman. If I search in YouTube, you will get 2 videos. So one video is, so first thing, what is Terraform? It's like almost 3 years ago. So he mentioned about why Terraform and things like that. Just try to understand, what Terraform is actually solving the problems and things like that. And the other thing is, again, 2 years back, he really given a nice session on, after writing, so around so 300K lines of code. So what is his experience? How do you keep the code? Okay. So yeah, actually I'm supposed to talk about that this actually in the next session, which is the modules. Okay. So, but yeah, so since you asked actually, so yeah, anyhow, every one of you try to spend some 2 hours of time and watch these 2 videos. This is worth watching. Seriously, if you are actually having a serious plan of using Terraform in your organization, or so it's not about learning, basically about the standard practice, best practice. So then yeah, so watch these 2 videos, then you will understand so clearly. Okay, so what is the best practice, and you get it. Okay, so now you decide. See, you are the author of the code, it is your choice. No one actually impose anything. But if you want to follow the industry standard and the best practices, yeah, you look for the people who already did it more and telling their experiences. Yeah, as simple as that. Yeah, make sense?
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, any questions? So Saturday we have some time.
It looks like maybe in the next session you will talk about the modules. Apart from going through this video.
Yeah, you go through these videos like it's a weekend, so you put some time, but I'll go with modules. Yes. Topic wise, we're just moving on. So why do you require modules? Then I'll explain that. Yeah.
Thank you.
And basically we have another colleague basically in our company. So we also write, this book, which is Keep Maurice. So this guy also write the infrastructure as code basically. So we kind of follow this little difference. The approach was a little difference. There's nothing major differences, but yeah. So little ideology difference of maintaining the code again. So we usually follow this because yeah, he's from our organization. So mostly, yeah, that way we are trying to do. But anyway, any book is fine, or any structure of your choice is okay. Any questions? Any topic, need not to be the sessions only. Can be anything. You have any? Or is it going good, bad, worst?
Raghu, this
Yeah.
Terraform uses in real-time project development. This is
Right.
going to use VR for only for creating infrastructure, right? Not for a development case.
Right, of course.
Okay.
And it empowers the developers to create their own infra, right? You need to understand that. It's a development code, and it empowers the developers also to write their own code. Write their own infra even, right? So it's majorly started with startup companies, like, so small and mid-cap companies is majorly focused on this. For larger organizations, I don't think so. Terraform basically makes sense. It's a joke even for them. Yeah, I'm feeling it for the current organization which I'm working for. I mean, organization in the sense, not organization. The client I'm working for, it's actually a joke for them. Terraform automation is a joke. It will never work for them. It's a legacy organization. You go and say that, you know, I create a server on the fly, I get the IPs on the fly. They will say that give me the IP address upfront. Now, how can I give him the IP address upfront? So if I don't create a server, how do I can create him give him a server IP address upfront? Right? It's not possible. And they will only say that, well, if you give the IP address upfront, then only I'll open the firewall. I mean, external firewall. Otherwise, I'll not open the firewall. So yeah, it takes time for the larger organizations, but yeah, so it empowers majorly the smaller organizations and mid-cap companies who really try to adopt the technology.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And also we need to understand. So basically, there are there are different organizations as well, right? So I think I'm not sure. I mean, every one of you were there on the demo session. So on the demo session, one person asked actually whenever I mentioned about, you know, so the middleware. So he was saying that, you know, so I think he didn't join actually, but still he was saying like, you know, but he made a point. Basically, you need to understand certain things from there. I know the answer, but I don't want to prolong the conversation on the same day. It's a demo, so don't want to create confusion for everyone. Let me clarify one thing. So in the Middle East, basically, he mentioned he's from Middle East region, working in Middle East region, and he's seeing a lot of projects still working on middleware. Now, okay, so
actually, still I am also working in Middle East only, Dubai. Still, actually, I also work for banking domain. So still we are using very old technologies.
let me tell you the answer for you now. Okay. So here, these organizations, all these organizations you see, those are not IT organizations. They are using IT for running their business. Those are typically not the IT companies. You name any top 10 companies which has come from Middle East, no company, right? It's mostly from US, Canada, and no. So either it can be UK or Indian region or Indian little Chinese, and not even Singapore. Singapore also I don't think so they have much. So majorly India, China, and UK region, some company. UK also very less, but UK you have. And US is the major one, and Canadian we have some companies, and Australia. Okay, these are the only regions where you have the IT companies. So, but your is not an IT company. Yours is a banking. Okay, so for banking, for you think about running the business. You don't look at the technology, or you don't look about moving ahead your technology, right? So you're typically not an IT company. You just use the IT. So that's the difference basically. But typically my statement usually I mention is, so IT companies, and ultimately if IT is following that, some other day you also has to follow that, right? So you start using middleware. I know that Oracle stopped support for, I'm not sure, WebLogic. Okay, at least they have stopped the development. I know that. Okay, so they stopped the development of Oracle WebLogic. Then what is the point you start putting the product on WebLogic in today, right? It doesn't make sense. IBM WebSphere, IBM itself is now out of those particular legacy stack and coming into the cloud, right? So yeah, so I don't think so. It's I mean, today it might run, but tomorrow, yeah, it will definitely see some changes. But it's a long way for certain companies. Again, as I mentioned, right? My current client is also a banking client. They'll say anything, we are financial, we cannot do this. Okay, so that's a funny part. Okay, I work for JP Morgan also. So they will be, you know, up to mark on the technology. Okay, so they'll not say all these fancy words. Okay, we are but bank doesn't mean actually we should not go into the technology, right? They can go into the technology. So that's how actually, that depends upon the leadership also. Again, you know, so some people it's about bread and butter also, right? So I work for some organization some time back, and so that time actually we were having a client called as Southwest Airlines in US, actually Southeast or Southwest, some airlines in US. So they have 64 middleware instances running on JBoss, I think. So whenever the new deployment is happening, so if there are 4 engineers in the shift, that 64 by 4, they put an Excel sheet, and so they'll took a 2 hours of downtime, and they took a 2 hours of downtime, and so manually upload one by one server. Okay, I went and so I just kind of automated it. I just click one script, and it's all 64 instances. It just update in a single shot. Okay. So then the script, everyone likes that script, every engineer started using it, and someday it went to the manager, and manager is still, really shocked about using that way. He kind of angrily told that, you should stop scripting because scripting can cause issues. Okay, fine. Okay, I left the organization. That's a different story. But yeah, after some time, there is no team of such team. That team has been completely, dissolved actually in the organization. So why such efforts? So that time he was looking only about the bread and butter, because he's trying to claim those particular timings to the client about the work they are performing, and instead of actually looking into the time of making it more engineering best practices, okay, they would have got the more business. But yeah, so they try to put that way. So they lost in the game in some day, right? So that's what my just way of, I'm trying to tell you that, right? So people, it's all, I mean, at that point of time, his bread and butter is only about the deployments only. He gets the revenue, his team gets the revenue only on deployments. If the deployment is, you're taking 2 hours, can be converted into 5 minutes, no one is ready to take it. That time, I'm at least almost 10 years back, close to. Okay, so yeah, it's again depends upon the people. If someone is really imposing a lot of automation, okay, then they will, you don't know, right, what happens. His bread and butter is lost. That's the major idea.
You're right about that. It totally depends on the organization and the leadership. How forward looking are they in terms of automating the stuff? You're totally right about that, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, any other?
And one more question, Raghu. Regarding after finishing this course for AWS, can we have a chance to get AWS certification through?
AWS certification is all about objective-oriented questions, right? So yeah, so you have to read a lot. Practical is less, reading is a lot. So you have to read a lot of things around the documentation of each and every topic, understand them, and then only you can go for the exam. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. After the course, if you need any help on the certification, just ping me on Slack. I can help you on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone? Any other questions? Okay, all right. So I don't want you. This should take your weekend time. All right. So anything? Yeah, put me on Slack. I'll be trying to respond. Okay. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Bye. Not tomorrow, day after tomorrow. Bye. Good day. Good night.